The Allies of Humanity, Book 1, Third Briefing, A Great Warning. We have been anxious to speak more with you regarding the affairs of your world and to help you come to see, if possible, what we are seeing from our vantage point. We realize this is difficult to receive and will cause considerable anxiety and concern, but you must be informed. The situation is very grave from our perspective, and we think it would be a tremendous misfortune if people were not informed correctly. There is so much deception in the world that you live in, and in many other worlds as well, that in truth, though apparent and obvious, goes unrecognized, and its signs and messages go undetected. We therefore hope that our presence can help clarify the picture and help you and others to see what is truly there. We do not have these compromises in our perception, for we were sent to witness the very things that we are describing. Over time, perhaps you would be able to know these things on your own, but you do not have this kind of time. The time now is short. Humanity's preparation for the appearance of forces from the greater community is far behind schedule. Many important people have not responded, and the intrusion into the world has accelerated at a far greater pace than was originally thought to be possible. We come with little time to spare, and yet we come with encouragement for you to share this information. As we have indicated in our previous messages, the world is being infiltrated and the mental environment is being conditioned and prepared. The intention is not to eradicate human beings, but to employ them, to have them become workers for a greater collective. The institutions of the world, and most certainly the natural environment, are valued, and it is the preference of the visitors that these be preserved for their use. They cannot live here, and so to gain your allegiance, they are employing many of the techniques that we have described. We will continue in our description to clarify these things. Our arrival here has been thwarted by several factors, not the least of which is a lack of readiness of those whom we must reach directly. Our speaker, the author of this book, is the only one with whom we have been able to establish a firm contact. There are a few others who show promise, but we must give our speaker the fundamental information. From the perspective of your visitors, as we have learned, the United States is considered the world leader, and so the greatest amount of emphasis will be placed here. But other major nations as well will be contacted, for they are recognized to hold power, and power is understood by the visitors, for they follow the dictates of power without question, and to a much greater degree than is even apparent in your world. Attempts will be made to persuade the leaders of the strongest nations to become receptive to the presence of the visitors and to receive gifts and inducements for cooperation with the promise of mutual benefit and even the promise of world dominions to some. There will be those in the corridors of power in the world who will respond to these inducements, for they will think that there is a great opportunity here to take humanity beyond the specter of nuclear war into a new community upon the earth, a community which they will lead for their own purposes. Yet, these leaders are deceived, for they will not be given the keys to this realm. They will simply be the arbiters in the transition of power. This you must understand. It is not so complex. From our perspective and vantage point, it is obvious. We have seen this occur elsewhere. It is one of the ways that established organizations of races who have their own collectives recruit emergent worlds such as yours. They believe firmly that their agenda is virtuous and for the betterment of your world, for humanity is not highly respected, and though you are virtuous in certain ways, your liabilities far outweigh your potential. From that perspective, we do not hold this view, or we would not be in the position that we are in, and we would not be offering our services to you as the allies of humanity. Therefore, there is a great difficulty now in discernment, a great challenge. The challenge is for humanity to understand who its allies really are and to be able to distinguish them from its potential adversaries. There are no neutral parties in this matter. The world is far too valuable, its resources recognized as being unique, and is of considerable worth. There are no neutral parties who are involved in human affairs. The true nature of the alien intervention is to exert influence and control, and eventually to establish dominion here. We are not the visitors. We are observers. We claim no right to your world, and we have no agenda to establish ourselves here. For this reason, our names are hidden, for we do not pursue relations with you beyond our ability to provide our counsel in this way. We cannot control the outcome. We can only advise you as to the choices and decisions that your people must make in light of these greater events. Humanity has great promise and has cultivated a rich spiritual heritage, but it is without education regarding the greater community into which it is emerging. Humanity is divided and contentious within itself, thus making it vulnerable to manipulation and to intrusion from beyond your borders. Your peoples are preoccupied with the concerns of today, but the reality of tomorrow is not recognized. What profit could you possibly gain by ignoring the greater movement of the world and by assuming that the intervention that is occurring today is for your benefit? Surely there is not one amongst you who could say this if you but saw the reality of the situation. In a way, it is a matter of perspective. We can see, and you cannot, for you have not the vantage point. You would have to be beyond your world, outside the sphere of your world's influence, to see what we are seeing. And yet, to see what we see, we must remain hidden, for your visitors consider their mission here to be of the utmost value, and they consider the earth to be their greatest prospect among several others. They will not stop because of us, So it is your own freedom that you must value and that you must defend. We cannot do this for you. Every world, if it seeks to establish its own unity, freedom, and self-determination in the greater community, must establish this freedom and defend it if necessary. Otherwise, domination will certainly occur and will be complete. Why do your visitors want your world? It is so very obvious. It is not you they are interested in particularly. It is the biological resources of your world. It is the strategic position of this solar system. You are useful to them only insofar as these things are valued and can be utilized. They will offer what you want, and they will speak what you want to hear. They will offer inducements, and they will use your religions and your religious ideals to foster confidence and trust that they, more than you, understand the needs of your world, and you will be able to serve these needs to bring about a greater equanimity here. Because humanity seems incapable of establishing unity and order, many people will open their minds and their hearts to those whom they believe will have the greater possibility for doing so. In the second discourse, we spoke briefly of the interpreting program. Some have heard of this phenomenon, and we understand there has been some discussion about this. The unseen ones have told us that there is a growing awareness that such a program exists, but incredibly, people cannot see the obvious implications, being so given to their preferences in the matter, and so ill-equipped to deal with what such an intervention could mean. Clearly, an interbreeding program is an attempt to fuse humanity's adaptation to the physical world with the visitor's group mind and collective consciousness. Such offspring would be in a perfect position to provide a new leadership for humanity, a leadership that is born of the visitor's intentions and the visitor's campaign. These individuals would have blood relations in the world, and so others would be related to them and accepting of their presence. And yet, their minds would not be with you, nor their hearts. And though they may seem empathy for you in your condition, and for what your condition may well turn out to be, they would not have the individual authority, not being trained in the way of knowledge and insight themselves, to assist you or to resist the collective consciousness that has fostered them here and given them life. You see, individual freedom is not valued by the visitors. They consider it reckless and irresponsible. They only stand their own collective consciousness, which they see as privileged and blessed, and yet they cannot access true spirituality, which is called knowledge in the universe. For knowledge is born of an individual's self-discovery and is brought into being through relationships of a high caliber. Neither of these phenomena are present in the visitor's social makeup. They cannot think for themselves. Their will is not theirs alone, and so naturally they cannot respect the prospects for developing these two great phenomena within your world, and they are certainly in no position to foster such things. They only seek conformity and allegiance, and the spiritual teachings that they will foster in the world will only serve to make humans compliant, open, and unsuspecting in order to garner a trust that has never been earned. We have seen these things before in other places. We have seen entire worlds fall under control of such collectives. There are many such collectives in the universe because such collectives deal with interplanetary trade and extend over vast regions. They adhere to a strict conformity without deviation. There is no individuality amongst them, at least not in any way that you could recognize. We are not sure that we can give you an example in your own world of what this could be like, but we have been told that there are commercial interests that span cultures in your world that wield tremendous power and yet are governed by only a few. This is perhaps a good analogy for what we are describing. However, what we are describing is so much more powerful, pervasive, and well established than anything that you could offer in the world as a good example. It is true of intelligent life everywhere that fear can be a destructive force, yet fear serves one and only one purpose if it is perceived correctly, and that is to inform you of the presence of danger. We are concerned, and that is the nature of our fear. We understand what is at risk. That is the nature of our concern. Your fear is born because you do not know what is occurring, so it is a destructive fear. It is a fear that cannot empower you or give you the perception that you need to comprehend what is occurring within your world. If you can become informed, then fear is transformed into concern, and concern is transformed into constructive action. We know of no other way to describe this. The interbreeding program is becoming very successful. Already, there are those walking your earth who are born of the visitor's consciousness and collective endeavor. They cannot reside here for long periods of time, but within only a few years, they will be able to dwell upon the surface of your world permanently. Such will be the perfection of their genetic engineering that they will seem only slightly different from you, more in their manner and in their presence than in their physical appearance, to such a point that they will likely go unnoticed and unrecognized. However, they will have greater mental faculties, and this will give them an advantage that you could not match unless you were trained in the ways of insight. Such is a greater reality into which humanity is emerging, a universe filled with wonders and horrors, a universe of influence, a universe of competition, yet also a universe filled with grace, much like your own world, but infinitely greater. The heaven that you seek is not here. However, the forces that you must contend with are. This is the greatest threshold that your race will ever face. Each of us in our group has faced this in our own respective world, and there has been a great deal of failure with only some success. Races of beings who can maintain their freedom and insulation must become strong and united, and will likely withdraw from greater community interactions to a very great degree in order to protect their freedom. If you think of these things, perhaps you will see corollaries in your own world. The unseen ones have told us a great deal regarding your spiritual development and its great promise, but they have also counseled us that your spiritual predispositions and ideals are being greatly manipulated at this time. There are entire teachings being introduced into the world now that teach human acquiescence and suspension of critical abilities and value only that which is pleasurable and comfortable. These teachings are given to disable people's ability to access knowledge within themselves until people reach a point where they feel they are completely dependent upon greater forces that they cannot identify. At that point, they will follow whatever is given them to do, and even if they sense something is wrong, they will no longer have the power to resist. Humanity has lived in isolation for a long time. Perhaps it is believed that such an intervention cannot possibly take place, and that each person has proprietary rights over his or her own consciousness and mind. But these are only assumptions. Yet, we have been told that the wise in your world have learned to overcome these assumptions and have gained the strength to establish their own mental environment. We fear that our words may be too late and have too little impact, and that the one we chose to receive us has too little assistance and support to make this information available. He will encounter disbelief and ridicule, for he will not be believed, and what he will speak of will contradict what many assume to be true. Those who have fallen under alien persuasion, they in particular will oppose him, for they have no choice in the matter. Into this grave situation, the Creator of all life has sent a preparation, a teaching of spiritual ability and discernment, power and accomplishment. We are students of such a teaching, as are many throughout the universe. This teaching is a form of divine intervention. It does not belong to any one world. It is not the property of any one race. It is not centered around any hero or heroine, any one individual. Such a preparation is now available. It will be needed. From our perspective, it is the only thing currently that can give humanity an opportunity to become wise and discerning regarding your new life in the greater community. As has occurred in your world, in your own history, the first to reach a new lands are the explorers and the conquerors. They do not come for altruistic reasons. They come seeking power, resources, and dominion. This is the nature of life. If humanity were well versed in greater community affairs, you would resist any visitation to your world unless a mutual agreement has been established previously. You would know enough not to allow your world to be so vulnerable. At this time, there is more than one collective competing for advantage here. That places humanity in the middle of a very unusual and yet enlightening set of circumstances. That is why the messages of visitors will often seem inconsistent. there has been conflict amongst them, yet they will negotiate with each other should mutual benefit be recognized. However, there is still competition. To them, this is the frontier. To them, you are only valued as being useful. If you are no longer recognized as being useful, you will simply be discarded. Here, there is a great challenge for the people of your world, and particularly for those who are in positions of power and responsibility, to recognize the difference between a spiritual presence and a visitation from the greater community. Yet, how can you have the framework to make this distinction? Where can you learn such things? Who in your world is in the position to teach about the reality of the greater community? Only a teaching from beyond the world can prepare you for life beyond the world. And life beyond the world is now in your world, seeking to establish itself here, seeking to extend its influence, seeking to win the minds and hearts and souls of people everywhere. It is so simple and yet so devastating. Therefore, our task in these messages is to bring a great warning, but the warning is not enough. There must be a recognition amongst your people, at least amongst enough people here. There must be an understanding of the reality that you are now facing. This is the greatest event in human history, the greatest threat to human freedom, and the greatest opportunity for human unity and cooperation. We recognize these great advantages and possibilities, but with each passing day, their promise fades as more and more people are captured and their awareness is recultivated and reconstituted. As more and more people learn of the spiritual teachings that are being promoted by the visitors, and as more and more people become more acquiescent and less able to discern, we have come at the request of the unseen ones to serve in this capacity as observers. Should we be successful, we will remain in the proximity of your world only long enough to continue to give you this information. Beyond that, we will return to our own homes. Should we fail, and should the tide turn against humanity, and should the great darkness come over the world, the darkness of domination, then we will have to depart, our mission unfulfilled. Either way, we cannot stay with you, though should you show promise, we shall stay until you are safeguarded, until you can provide for yourselves. Included in this is a requirement that you be self-sufficient. Should you become reliant upon trade with other races, this creates a very great risk of manipulation from beyond, for humanity is not yet strong enough to resist the power in the mental environment that can be exerted here and is being exerted here now. The visitors will try and create the impression that they are the allies of humanity. They will say they are here to save humanity from itself, that only they can offer the great hope that humanity cannot provide for itself, that only that they can establish true order and harmony in the world. But this order and this harmony will be theirs, not yours, and the freedom that they promise will not be yours to enjoy.